without further ado, I'm going to introduce Sara. And Sara, I'm going to let you actually talk about your business. But Sara and I just met a couple of weeks ago. We haven't actually met face to face, but we met, well, I guess face to face, but not
Yeah.
physically in the same space. And she's met through Roger Rail. So, Sara, can you talk a little bit about what you do? And then she's got some slides for us about some of her ideas about staying physically healthy while we're working.
All right. And then can the slide share, screen share turn on, or how does that work?
You just turn in, you start on a slide. It's I don't know exactly, but hopefully, uh,
All right. I've requested, so share. Let me see. And are we good?
there you go.
Yep.
All right. And let's see. Is that, I probably want to do it full. That's better?
Yeah,
Or
there you
is it
go.
covering up?
That's
It's okay.
great.
Go ahead. Go
It's
ahead.
Go
good
ahead.
enough. It's good enough. All right. Well, thank you, Rob. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to everybody, and good to see some familiar faces. That was kind of a real treat. There's a number of people I know either through church or that I've worked with before. So, at any rate, it's great to speak to all of you about working from home. Here's a little bit about who I am. I'm the founder of Structured Health Resources and a Mouse with Your Arm methodology, which is a method that I will leave you with knowledge of that today. That's my goal today, is for you to understand a new posture that you might consider using to help you be more comfortable while you work. So one of the things that I can offer the group is that I have worked from home for 24 years, 16 of those years with children, and I have three, all preteen and teen right now. And so I understand the challenges that many people are facing, and I just kind of have to laugh at early on when people worked from home. You kind of tried to hide it. You weren't really, I went from the Sears Tower to working from home, and it was a big difference. You kind of pretended you weren't. Today we have the advantage that everybody's working from home, so you don't have to hide it anymore, and it's let us kind of relax about it, which I think is a real positive component. So for 16 years, we've actually done a virtual service, and our goal is to prevent and manage disability primarily through ergonomics. So helping people with how you relate to your computer and how you posture yourself when you work is the main component. And the virtual service, it was again 16 years ago, and what surprised us is we had the same outcome in providing a virtual service as we did as the on-site. We never expected that, but it really, basically, the method of offering it really became fine-tuned to allow the person to successfully implement the changes. And that's kind of what my goal is in these 7 minutes, is to give you something practical to implement following this presentation. So the satisfied customers that had that higher than 95%, these people really invested in their relationship with their computer. They figured out a method that they could apply that was easy. They learned how to manage these static postures and create movement in their daily work, and to address discomfort before it became pain, pain before it became a disability, and then if they had a disability, they made sure that they accommodated it and found a way to work more comfortably. So much has changed. We've gone from, when I first started in the field, I used to say, raise your hand if you use a computer. Seriously, I might not look that old, but I am. At any rate, so I've been 3 decades helping people be more comfortable. And I really did start with the typewriter, not this one shown in the picture, but then we moved into computers, and we're pretty much a technology-centric society. We all know that. In fact, before the pandemic, we spent more time with our computers than our significant others, right? Before the pandemic. And 1 in 2 Americans actually has a musculoskeletal disorder. And these are these cumulative traumas. They could be carpal tunnel, they could be bad back, could be shoulder impingement. These things that accumulate from these little micro traumas that we have, really mostly from poor posture. That's poor posture is the primary cause of these musculoskeletal disorders. So we've had an increase in the telecommuting and remote working. This has been good. It's good for our environment. Right now we're all forced to do it, but there really are some positive implications from this. Less storefronts, less real estate for companies if people are working from home. But then there's the question of now with this global pandemic, the solution for your ergonomics is now in your hands. It's not, you no longer have your corporate ergonomists or your facilities or procurement department helping you. It's up to you in your own home to figure it out. And prior to this pandemic, a lot of companies would invest in their employees' home offices. I'd love to hear from the group at the end if any companies are offering to help you set up your home office. So although things have changed, some things have really stayed the same. And this is some early tutorials from the Mavis Beacon typing guide that basically talks to you about the components of good posture, which is your upper arm is almost vertical, so this, your arm is in this vertical position, straight up and down generally. You squarely in front of your computer, your back is straight, you're leaning back. Properly adjusted armrests are important. These are some basic components that have been consistent, whether you're on a typewriter, whether you're on a computer. And it's not a new message. In fact, OSHA came up with this good working posture of how your forearms should be straight, arms parallel. This woman is a great example. Upper arms hanging down, elbows stay by your side, and your back is fully supported. So from these educational tutorials, I coined this mouse with your arm methodology, which is this go-to posture. It's kind of like lift with your legs, mouse with your arm. And what you're seeing is an application of this go-to posture that has been applied and measured for 24 years, and 3,600 people have applied it with greater than 95% outcome, saying I'm more comfortable, my symptoms are reduced or eliminated, and it's very basic. This woman Michelle is supporting her forearm with her chair's armrest. Her upper arm is vertical. She's not having any contact against the work surface. Her elbow staying by her side. Her wrist is neutral, and she's sitting back in the chair. These are the main components of this mouse with your arm methodology. Well, what happened is a colleague challenged me to go out into research and said, Sara, I want to know from all ergonomic studies why scientists support your mouse with your arm methodology. And what was interesting about this is I came into the field as a disability manager, so I had not read all the ergonomic scientific studies because I was focused on managing disability, not really understanding the field of ergonomics. And what I discovered after 100 ergonomic studies was that all of them were saying computer use is really a high-risk activity, that it exposes the human body to all these awkward postures, compression, musculoskeletal symptoms and issues are on rise. So many people have back issues. I just really discovered it was a problem, but they were saying it was a problem because people are reaching. And they said it was a problem because people are resting on their desk and their wrists aren't staying neutral. And they said it was a problem because people weren't sitting back in their chair. And it dawned on me that all of these studies were recommending that you support your forearm on your desk, not on your chair armrest. And I had the OMG moment. I called my colleague. I said, all of these studies are saying that you need to rest your forearms on your desk. I'm shocked. And these were all peer-reviewed scientific studies over the last 3 decades, even more. So what was clear is they weren't doing a holistic approach to how you manage disability. And what was fascinating is that only one study in all the studies that were reviewed applied a mouse with your arm methodology, or like that OSHA good working posture. So here's a recreated image of it. So station A is somebody who has their forearm resting on the desk. And station B is someone who's applying a mouse with your arm method, or even that OSHA where they're not resting their forearm on the desk. And this was the only ergonomic study that showed a mouse with your arm method. Basically, the author said that this is not recommended for somebody to rest their arm on the desk if you have shoulder or wrist issues, and that when you're using that workstation B, you are also not reaching. That's a positive. And this was the only study that ever applied a mouse with your arm kind of method. So what happened was I submitted a paper basically with this finding that this hole in research, that all previous research has consistently recommended that people rest their forearms on their desk or an apparatus or a wrist rest, and this has resulted in these non-neutral postures, causing musculoskeletal disorders. So the message to you today is that we can prevent and mitigate these musculoskeletal disorders by stop resting on our desk and getting forearm support from our armrest. The paper was published last month. It's divided into 5 different categories. Well, a month and a half ago, well, March. And it's basically teaching you to sit back in your chair, to work below your relaxed elbow height, to keep your mouse and keyboard on the edge of your surface, remove these barriers that kind of cause friction when you try to reach for things like wrist rests, and then there's other variables that go into great length. So here's an example of Michelle, her before and after. Before, her wrist is touching the desk, she's reaching into her mouse and keyboard, she's not using her armrest, and her after is she's sitting and engaging in the back of her chair and getting the support she needs. So if you try mouse with your arm, Rob said he'd send out this one-sheet summary to everybody following if you're interested. If there's time at the end, I have some like before and after images that I'm happy to share during discussion if we want to go into that. But please share this concept and hope you're more comfortable when you're working.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have a very quick question. I'm sure there's many, many more, and we'll take them if you put them on the chat. But one is that a lot of people, including myself, are working from laptops.
Yep.
My keyboard is not reachable from my. So are you really, how much do you recommend we get the portable keyboards and mouse?
Okay, so I'm trying to remove, did I successfly remove the screen
Yes.
share? Okay,
Yes.
very good. So let me, I'm sorry, Rob. So let me get back to you. And your question
Yeah.
is, go ahead.
So it's about using, what if you have a laptop and I'm
Yeah.
able to reach the laptop? Should I invest in?
Yeah, an external keyboard. And I also work on a laptop. What's important is to have this top of the screen around your eye level. I can go into some of that if there's time at the end. And people who wear bifocals, usually laptop's not a problem. But again, we have a video on our website that goes into bifocal wearers and laptop use. So, but that's a long topic, and but peripherals are important. External mouse, external keyboard. A laptop is called a laptop because it's meant to be used in your lap. And when you use a laptop in your lap, your elbows are next to your side. When you're using a laptop on a desk, usually your elbows are not by your side. So that's part of that, applying that mouse with your arm method, is to make sure your elbows stay by your side.
And we have a quick question from Diane Boyce about a standing desk.
Okay, I'd love to do a whole session on that because I own the URL. Standing is the new vaping. So sitting's the new smoking, and we find that standing's the new vaping. People think that you can purchase a solution to your health, and really you need to just invest in your health and your computer relationship. Yes, movement is good. Standing desk can often place you at a very awkward sitting position and even a standing position. So these devices are promoted as the end-all be-all. Height adjustable desks are awesome. They adjust low for that 5'2" individual and higher for the 6'4". Yeah, hi Annie. And so there's real advantages to height adjustable desks. These standing desks, I am quite concerned about. They unintentionally put people at very awkward postures. Okay. So they're good if they're used properly and they're custom to the needs of that individual and the work that they perform.
Okay, well, there's other questions on there. Maybe you could answer them.
I don't see them, so I chat. There's a chat. I see lots of them. Do you want me to read those, or do you want me to?
We're going to move on in terms.
Yeah, thank you.
Nate. So thank you very much. Let's all give her a hand.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent presentation. And,
thank you.
These slides will be made available. I'll send them out to people by Monday. And we're also going to have the video of this that will be posted to my YouTube channel, which is called it's called leadersconnect.com. It's on YouTube. And Nate, I'm going to let you speak from deep in your study there. You tied up your 2-year-old and your 5-year-old.
Yeah, they are in the basement. I left them with some food and water. Hopefully they'll be good after this.
That's good. Nate
So,
Lowery, Nate, I'll let you introduce yourself and talk about your company. And you've been working at home for many years. You run your business from home. How many out there run businesses from home? If you do, raise your hand. Several of us do, okay? And that's now and before. Okay, Nate, go ahead.
yeah, thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me. Nice to see you all this morning. Good morning. Again, my name is Nate Lowery. This is my first time joining you all, so I'm pleased to be here. And in fact, reached out to Rob maybe 6 months ago, very apropos of the subject of today's meeting. One thing I don't think I have solved is the one thing we all miss now in this time is having, that social interaction here in the community. Because I work, as Rob said, from home. I have for the last 7-8 years. I've got 300 employees, most of whom are in Connecticut and Florida. So, I don't see a lot of familiar faces in the crowd, and that's a problem I'm looking to address. So pleased to be here. My business is called Lex TM3. I'll go ahead and pull up just a screenshot of our recently relaunched website. As I was looking at my PowerPoint decks, I thought this actually more so than anything else would give you a sense for what we do. We are a leading manufacturer of equipment that's known as portable power distribution and control systems for the entertainment, industrial, and military markets. So we describe our business as being panel to plug. We don't manufacture diesel generators. It's all the stuff in between, from as simple as cables you see there to more complex systems.
Hey, we're not seeing your slide.
There we go. There we go. How's that?
Good, got it.
Thank you, Rob. So again, portable power distribution equipment for these three verticals. It's the stuff in between a diesel generator and where it gets used. And it's everything from simple cables to complex energy storage and control systems that, that's obviously where our growth is coming from. And my personal passion is around, energy technology and reducing our collective carbon footprint in our, electricity use. And so we are pushing forward with integrating lithium-ion battery energy storage systems into our sort of portable power world. So I started this business about 7-8 years ago, based here again in Ann Arbor. I've got some of my engineers are over in Royal Oak, but as we grew, we ended up buying 2 other businesses, one in Connecticut and one in Florida, as I mentioned. And so, I spent a lot of time on airplanes in 2015, 16, and 17. I even had an apartment in Connecticut in 2017. And I share all that as context because, the lessons that I'm going to share on the next slide, hopefully give you some food for thought as we go into our breakout sessions. Lessons that I've learned from managing a business, from home of this size. So I kind of broke it into, I've got 3 lessons learned in the professional, managing others category, and 2 in the personal, managing yourself category. So, number 1, it's even more important when working from home to invest time in relationships, both one-on-one and creating a team and building the trust amongst the team. If you're not there every day, you can't have the casual interactions. You've really got to invest in that. And so that, for me, that, as I mentioned, looked like a lot of time on airplanes. And in today's, reality, that's, clearly not an option for us. But, my recommendation to anyone who's new to it would be, spend time on Zoom, especially on the one-on-one discussions. The FaceTime was incredibly important early on, and then since 2018 and 2019, I really didn't have to get on an airplane. So having that investment early on set me up for success with my team later. And really the only FaceTime that I have with my team now is feeding into number 2, the second point. So, I would say that micromanagement, I think we all know is bad in any context, but it's basically impossible in this format. And so, learning to drive alignment and accountability through the use of metrics and regular check-ins. I do these about monthly, every 4 to 6 weeks. I'll sit down and have a 60 to 90-minute meeting with each of my direct reports. And that's where I find FaceTime and Zoom to be most valuable. My weekly management team meeting, we actually just do it, without the screen share. We find, in our context, that's been more distracting than anything. Maybe we have some things to learn on that, but I've found that, the Zoom one-on-one, if there's any, emotional content, any personal content to a meeting, there's no substitute for body language and eye contact. And so that would be my strongest recommendation in terms of managing your direct reports. And then third is, make yourself available for ad hoc phone meetings. In today's digital world, I'm a early millennial, right? So I'm used to in my social life, I don't hardly talk on the phone to anybody anymore. But in the business context, a 2-minute phone call saves so much back and forth on email. And so, versus the office context, you can fly by somebody's office. The equivalent in this context I've found is just having my phone available, a quick text message, hey, can I call you in 5? And I make 20 or 30 2-minute phone calls a day, and that saves a lot of time elsewhere. And then, as far as as I reflect on what I've learned about managing myself in this context, as Rob alluded to, I've got 2 young girls, 5 and 2, and the first thing, and it took me longer than I care to admit to learn this, which is why I paused to share this with you all in case this is relevant to your context, was to keep work and family time and space separate, right? I thought, hey, I'm working from home. This is great. I can, I get to be around my girls, in and out. But I found that was incredibly disruptive to them. It's hard for my wife or the nanny to manage them as I'm kind of flying through their space in work mode, maybe sometimes even on a conference call. It was really unfair to them and didn't really serve anybody's purpose. So, I'm much more disciplined today about, this is work hours. Maybe I'll go down and join them for lunch, come back to work. And the fluid moving in between my space and theirs, it was not the right way to think about it. So that's one strong recommendation I'd have for you all. And then number 2, in this context, I'm sure you all can relate, you suddenly find yourself, at least hopefully you do, with more space in your schedule, right? Less commuting, less meetings just for the sake of meetings. And so with that space, I've learned to give myself permission to use that time for self-care, right? Meditation practices, reading, time in nature, exercise, all that good stuff that we know we're supposed to do. Hopefully you have more time to do it, and you can give yourself permission to do it, right? Going for a run at 2 p.m. isn't really an option in most office contexts, or at least you might feel like you can't take that time for yourself. Now perhaps you have permission to do that, and I'm a strong believer, and I try and share this with my team, that self-care is work. It makes us more productive. We think more clearly, we communicate more kindly, all that good stuff. So those, Rob, are some of the things I had to share with the group. Just some of my reflections on this time. I'd be happy to tell more about my business, but I don't want to turn it into a commercial for that. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Are there any questions about what Nate has prepared so far? And also I'm asking everybody to please mute their audio if they're not speaking, because we're hearing some background noise in this. So Nate, you mentioned the exercise. Do you do that on a routine basis, or do you do it sort of when you feel like it? How do you get that into your day?
Yeah, I schedule it. It's like I make a meeting with myself. It depends on the day, but I either do cardio or I do weightlifting, depending on the day. Oh, and I I do Pilates one day a week, and I do that with a remote trainer actually.
Rob,
You're able to do Pilates remotely. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Work out.
Rob.
Yeah.
Certain Rob, this first. You could mute all as the controller. So
Oh, okay.
why don't you just mute all, and then whoever wants to speak can unmute.
All right. Yeah. I think Emily's my assistant Emily is managing that. So
And the
hopefully
participants, just click on
everybody.
participants.
Yeah.
And then just mute all.
Okay. So by show of hands, how many of you have built-in exercise to your routines regularly? Okay, lots of people have. That's excellent. And so remote trainers, I've been doing that. I had a trainer that I work with once a week, and now she's doing things remotely with me. And I think that's great. And how does it work with your daughters, Nate, in terms of your schedule? And you said your wife also is working. So you guys have like shifts that you do? How does that work?
Yeah. So my wife's a physician at the U. She's a psychiatrist in residency, her first year of residency, actually. So we do have a nanny. Yeah, it's because she works very long hours from the hospital still. I'm taking the morning and evening and weekends. And I'm kind of trading shifts with my nanny is basically what I'm doing.
Okay, so you have a regular like punch in, and maybe that's the wrong word these days, but
yeah,
you have your time schedules to
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. All right. Well, and Nate, if you could put up your contact information, people learn more about either your business, which is quite fascinating and very relevant, and it's good for people to know about it. Maybe figure out ways that they might get more connected to it. And when we get back to concerts and we have a 50,000 person show for DeVoe out there at DeVoe, maybe you could use Nate's equipment to get your sound equipment in good shape. So we all want to work together here. And let's, Dan Hamlin, you're there. You also have worked a long time from home. Do you have any comments to add to this or questions for Nate?
I mean, a lot of that resonated, right? The sort of separating. I have my own space, I have a door. I try not to, I can't work with the distractions around. But also I've been trying to be aware of like if you have a commute, right, you have a little bit of time to sort of unwind, and I might end the day with a really intense phone call or whatever. And I have to be aware of, that feeling in my system. And then I go out into, right over there, and I'm on, right, as a dad and a husband. So I just have to sort of be aware of that transition and how rapid it can happen, and not sort of try to diffuse whatever tension is there very quickly. But a lot of what Sara said and what Nate said resonated. I try to have physical space that's very comfortable. I do have a standing desk, but I can sort of go back and forth between sitting and standing. Try to have my, try to make it all very comfortable and have no excuses, nothing that would, distract from work that makes it uncomfortable to be here.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. And how long have you done this, Dan?
8 years.
8 years. And you don't run your company, but you work for a company. So you're on the other end of, what do you find is good practices from somebody who is working at home and you're not the boss?
I mean, I try to be aware of, the value. There are water cooler conversations going on at headquarters, right? Or not currently, but in general, right? And so I have to be a little bit extra aggressive about asking about interesting things that are happening and things that I can be involved with. Otherwise, I just might sit here and wait for the phone to ring and it doesn't happen. And then other interesting things are happening. I focus, I manage some people and try to really, have a good internet pipe. Early on, Comcast had some glitches out here, had that fixed, and now it's really good, but bad internet is terrible. Big, try to have a lot of in-person conversations. And when someone starts, I really want to, instead of being mysterious Dan far away, right, I try to have an in-person conversation by video, so I'm approachable.
All right. Well, I'm going to turn things over to Dunrie now. Dunrie and I have worked together for, probably about 5 or 10 years, quite a while. And Dunrie's helped me edit, co-write actually one of my books. Dunrie, you're going to talk a little bit about your experience and also lead us through an exercise in small group.
Yeah. Given the time, I think I'm going to cut my remarks short and go quickly to the exercise. But first, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I've had my own writing and independent marketing consulting business since 2005, so 15 years. And the company name is Scientific Inc., and that reflects my training as a scientist. I have a doctorate in plant ecology from the University of Michigan, and my lifelong interest in writing. So my professional work is about helping people measure. The science side of it is measure and optimize what's working for them online. And then the ink side, the writing side, is helping create wonderful content to, of course, improve people's communications and websites and relationships online. So I think I want to, Sara and Nate have said such wonderful things, and a lot of what I had thought I would say, they've reflected, which is great. And I think the thing that I've learned about working remotely, particularly as someone who has a kind of a solitary remote career, is making sure to have structured time for social events. I think it's really easy in this pandemic moment for us to remember to get a hold of the people who are near and dear to us. So I'm making sure I call my mom, right? Making sure I connect with my sister. And what I'm missing the most are the kind of next tier relationships and the next tier serendipitous interactions. And those encouragement and stories and jokes and infusions of energy in my day is something that I really miss as an independent person, and particularly now in this pandemic when I'm not running into the person at the coffee shop or the People's Food Co-op or whatever it is, seeing Annie at the food co-op. So I was chatting with Rob about how we can bring back some of the serendipitous conversation that I've always valued from Leaders Connect. And I thought we might leverage what Zoom has made available with breakout rooms. So my thought was that Emily would divide us into breakout rooms. And I wanted to, please raise your hand if you've played around with Zoom breakout rooms before, if you've been in a breakout room. So it looks like maybe on my screen, less than half of people have been in a breakout room. So the way that Zoom breakout rooms work is the moderator puts people in a room together, so you leave this area with all of us, and you're in an environment within Zoom that's got 3 people, and we're going to do this randomly. So people you won't be sorted by any reason other than what Zoom algorithm wants you to do. And then we're going to ask you to just talk about what you've heard. And the instructions will show up. Emily is going to make sure that once you're in the Zoom rooms, the instructions will show up at the top of your screen. And what we're going to ask is that you answer this question with each other after a quick introduction if you don't know each other. How has your blank, and you can choose one of the topics or themes presented, changed during this shelter in place? What has been challenging for you? What have you found that's worked? So how is your blank changed during shelter in place? What has been challenging for you? What have you found that's worked? And I think we still can do 6 minutes.
Okay.
So,
And we could probably go over to if we, I think some people might have hard stops at 9, but less so these days than before. So.
Yeah, and I want to encourage people to think about what you'll bring back to the group, and then you know how Rob so well solicits feedback. So think about what you might bring back from your small group of 3 with 6 minutes to share with all of us. Emily, would you be willing to start the groups?
Okay.
So I was in a group with Karen Ferris.
Who is, Dave, okay.
This is DeVoe, sorry. DeVoe and Karen Ferris, 3 of us. And I think, so we all had to adjust that we weren't working at home previously. So that was the biggest change. Karen probably had the biggest one, where she is an outside person going to see customers in multiple states. and specifically in the medical, and she's completely shut out. So she's had to not only work from home, but not be in front of people, which is essentially what her job is. And that's kind of the changes and the challenges. And I think the thing that's worked is just carving out that space in your house to be specific to your office. So try to find a room or a space in the basement or something that's yours that you can focus on the work at hand. And also just kind of changing up your routine. So Ferris talked about he was able to like take breaks and hang out, go for walks with his kids, go for walks with his wife when he wouldn't normally because he'd be at the office. And I think we've all done a little bit of that. So that's the quick recap. So challenges, but we've overcome them and making some adjustments that actually have been a positive with families and our social life.
All right. Good. We're going to keep going a little beyond 9 for those that want. But before we stop, Allison, are you there? Allison Mankowski still on?
Yep. Hi.
Yes. Allison is going to lead us in a little bit of an exercise now, of a real exercise. So you want us just to take a break from when we're sitting. What can we do, Allison? Something real quick.
Yep. So Rob asked me to just kind of share a few kind of stretching in the chair tips. So I'll show a few of those and then kind of talk about some other things that I've been doing. But a couple things, obviously I learned a lot about my positioning today, and I know I'm going to be adjusting where my chair is and all of that. So hopefully that helps. But I find it really helpful to just find some ways to get some movement, even just sitting in your chair. One of my favorite ones is to kind of hold the arm of the chair and pin my shoulders back and just sit like that. I know I have a problem hunching, and so that upper back gets really, really tight. So if you're able to kind of stick your elbows behind, stick your chest out a little bit, that gives a really good, nice stretch there.
That feels good.
And then the twisting sideways and just holding that both ways also is another really good one. My favorite one that I have been trying to do almost every morning standing, but works really well sitting too, is just the like reaching up and then grabbing your wrist with both hands and pulling to the side and holding, and then back up to the middle and then pulling to the side and holding, and then back up to the middle and just kind of arching towards the back. That one is probably my favorite. Like I said, works really well standing too, but does well for the chair. So those are just a few good ones. Neck is another big one. So just using your hand to kind of stretch your neck a little bit as well. But I know I've been trying, I went from a job where I was running around all day to basically sitting for hours on end. So I've been trying, if I have, a couple minutes between appointments, my office is in the basement. So I'll just go out to the basement steps and just walk up and down the basement steps, 4 or 5 times. It only takes a minute or two, but it's just enough to kind of get me moving. And I've also been trying to do a little bit of like, okay, I'm going to take 5 minutes. I'm going to go upstairs, and I have 2 kids, so there's stuff all over my house. So I'm going to take, 2 minutes to go and put 5 things away. And usually that involves walking from the living room to the kids' bedroom, to my bedroom, to the kids' bedroom, to the living room. And that just gives me, 2 minutes of just kind of walking, but also feeling like I'm being a little bit productive. So.
Thank you. Those are great. Very good. And again, maybe we could put a little video of you up there, Allison. How long do you hold those?
Usually, somewhere around 30 seconds or so, 15 to 30 seconds, depending on, how tight you're feeling.
All right. Well, let's try it again. I like that one.
Yeah.
All right. It sounds great. Feels great. Allison knows my mother-in-law, but we've been doing chair yoga every day. We have somebody, we were watching a video that my trainer developed for us doing, it's really chair exercises, but it's quite nice. And I'm amazed at how well my mother-in-law can hang in there for a half an hour doing those exercises. So thank you. Allison, any of your team get drafted? I know Allison does diet for the Eastern football team.
We have a couple of guys, 3 of them who got signed, I think after the draft, but there's 3 of them who are on rosters right now. So we'll see. I know our athletic director just did a house call with a bunch of our former Super Bowl champs from Eastern. There's Charlie Batch and Andrew Wiley, and a couple of the guys that have gone through us. He just did a big video call with all of them and broadcast it to everyone. So that was pretty cool to watch.
Well, I've got, I had 4 of my students that were drafted in the first 8 rounds from Michigan. So I'm excited about that. All right. Well, next week we're going to be back online with, and I'm going to keep this open for continuing chat, but just for those of you that have to leave, next week I have 3 doctors 2 from St. Joe's and 1 from the VA, who are going to be talking about the physical and mental health of the healthcare providers and what they're trying to do to keep people healthy. And they'll update us also on COVID in Washtenaw County and answer any of your questions. So thank you, everyone. We'll stay on for a few more minutes. Anybody have any comments or anything to add to this?
Rob, we had...
Can you identify yourself?
It's Tony Jarvis from Melbourne, Australia at the moment. We had I was in a room with Ben and Anne, and one of the things we talked about was this negotiating your physical environment, and the things we missed were, so it's great setting up the office and getting everything right, negotiating the physical space. But I think one of the things we talked about was the need to get up and go somewhere else in the house and work occasionally. The sort of change of environment, the sort of the cafe effect, that you could just go and plonk down somewhere and work there, and that made quite a difference to being productive, and a little bit of variation in the space helped a lot as well.
Okay. Yeah, especially with the sunlight coming in. I know I'm in the basement of my house. It's a half basement, but I really like to go to the sun coming in. And now the sunlight coming outside, it's great to be able to work outside too. That's a huge difference.
Rob.
Anybody else have anything they want to share? Yeah, Sarah?
Rob, Sarah, this is Sarah, and I was with Barb and Rick, and we talked about, Barb working at a dining room table. I mean, that's a real legitimate, concern and issue that she has, and trying to get comfortable. And there's a lot of people, we've seen that from our virtual work, that people do that a lot. And placing pillows and things you can do. Well, who knows how long this is going to go on for? So one of the ideas was it's worth investing in bringing your chair home from the office if you have that capacity. So that was one idea. And then just not having commutes and using that time differently because we're not commuting. So we really have this bonus time in our day, and how are we using that? And for Rick, he was, is getting more healthy, and he's taking really good care of himself. So there's a lot of, I think, positives and a lot we can do to invest in making this a comfortable situation for ourselves.
Again, I encourage people to put on the chat your name and contact information, what you do. If you want to be more involved, have everybody talk to you, we'll share this. I know it's a big adjustment for everybody. We're all kind of getting lonely. It was hard to hear the governor say there's going to be another 4 weeks of this. I was also really shocking to see the militia on the steps of the State House with their guns. I mean, that kind of made me nervous. I don't know anybody else, but we're living in frightening times, as well as not just the virus, but the virus is running through our society, I think, in terms of people being so different. But I don't mean to leave on a negative note. Positive note, the polls show we're actually much more united, much like after 9/11, where we did come together a lot more than we did before that. So hopefully that will stay as a state rather than falling back into division. Jerry, any other comments? I know Jerry's ADD specialist. Anything you got in up your sleeve that you want to share with people? You gotta unmute, Jerry. Go ahead. Let me try to unmute her. All right, well, we'll have to catch you next time.
There I go.
There we go. Okay.
The idea of structure, I think that getting up and getting dressed, making your bed, and getting ready for work sets the stage, and having different places in the house where you do different things. And then a lot of times working in shorter time periods, just taking breaks, and really getting some fresh air and making sure your sleep. I mean, a lot of people are so tired and they're lethargic. So at night they just binge, and then that messes you up. So you can't beat biology if you want to be productive. So it's one thing to get your physical space and your time space, but you got to get your head space set up so that you can focus. So if you find you're not focusing, you want to use all your analytical skills to say, when do I focus best, and organize your schedule.
One of my favorite tips, and I don't know if I learned this from you, Jerry, but probably because you've taught me all the good things I know in life, but the idea of setting a timer, if you're procrastinating on something, you say, well, what's the least I could work at it? Well, I can at least put 5 minutes into this. So I set the timer for 5 minutes, and 9 times out of 10, that timer will go off several times until I actually finish the project. So if there's something you don't want to read, but you have to read, or some paper you have to write, set the timer and don't get up until that timer beeps, and even then reset it if you have some energy to keep going. So that's another behavioral tip that's pretty powerful for people. Any others? Larry,
Yeah,
I want to say hi to you, Larry Eiler. How's your book coming, Larry? You gotta unmute, Larry. We gotta unmute Larry here. Larry, try
May
to get.
24th, I'm starting the blog, so.
You want to say what that is, Larry? So it's 24th, you're starting, what is it?
The book is called The Power of Positive Dying, and I've been working on it for about 5 years, and it's stories about people who are dying and want to talk about it, as most of us don't. So it discusses the whole issue of what we talk about and what we don't talk about, what we're comfortable with, lack of education on dying and aging, and those type of things. And that's what I'm speaking and writing about a lot right now. So
okay, great.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah, and Carol, you're out there. I wanted to say maybe we should organize one of these for leaders of nonprofits, because
That'd
I think
be great. I am participating in a couple of groups right now, and
okay, so there are some going, because I think this is really a huge challenge for people right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
special.
you might let people know that the Association of Fundraising Professionals, in combination with Michigan Nonprofit Association, is doing a call next week that will bring professionals from New York, Louisiana, and Michigan together to talk about how we're managing nonprofits. It's been quite a struggle.
Well, thank you very much to Nate. Nate, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Sarah, great ideas. Sarah, we could probably have you on for a whole hour here, just sharing some of your great ideas and answering questions. Because
it would be my pleasure, Rob.
Yeah. All right. And Dunrie, thank you for organizing this chat room. And Emily, who's probably not on the screen, but Emily, thank you so much for making the chat room work. I was desperate to think, like, how do we get out of that? And then the same thing came up there, like, oh, you got 58 seconds. Oh, okay, that's how it's going to work. So raise your thumbs up or thumbs down about the small group. Thumbs up or thumbs down. All right, we'll do more of that next time. We'll be sure to build in more time for that, and the networking can continue then. From Rob's basement, thank you all. Have a great day. It's going to be a beautiful sunny day.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'll look for you in the park, Annie, Walt, and whoever's out there. I'm going to the putting green with my son this afternoon, so that's
nice.
That's my breakout today. So we'll see how that works. Bye-bye.
Enjoy, Rob. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.